to know the answer.
And the rehab treatments range from showing up for counseling once in a while to going off to a sanitarium, which could be very expensive. Is that any more effective?
You know, there's not even long-term longitudinal studies to follow people over time, so I don't even know how to answer that. I mean, what I know is that the relapse rates for most addictions are 40 to 60% after going to rehab. And when it comes to heroin, it's 90%. So I think the numbers speak for themselves.
Getting back to methadone, okay, let's say somebody puts me into methadone treatment. What does that involve?
Well, the methadone is incredibly effective for 3 out of 4 of the people in this, film, and it ends up being the solution for so many of the people we follow.
But you also revealed that it's hard for a lot of these people to get to the methadone clinics.
It's crazy. I mean, if you think about how ghettoized this is, you have to physically take yourself to a location. In a lot of places in this country, there are no methadone clinics. So drive yourself to the nearest facility every day of your life and back to be able to get to work on time. That's asking a lot of somebody.
A few of them said they had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to drive to the methadone clinic and then drive all the way back to go to their jobs.
Yeah, that's a lot to ask.
But the methadone allows them to live what seems to be a normal life?
Well, it replaces their I guess the opioids that they need and it's controlled to a level where they're not craving, and that means that they don't have to go out and prostitute themselves or sell drugs to get the next hit. It allows them to continue functioning.
And they have to do this every day?
Every day. Some people, after a while, if they've proven that they're not selling their methadone, will get something called a carry. So you'll go and you'll get 2 more extra bottles. They'll keep you going through the week. But you'll still have to go 3 times a week.
Johnny, another one of the people you feature, who's a musician, who had a career once, is prescribed Suboxone, which blocks the urge to use heroin. But it doesn't seem to stop him from being an addict.
Well, that's the thing about Suboxone. It only works for heroin. But if you're an addict, you have an urge to get loaded. And so when he started taking this drug, it sort of compelled him to use meth instead. So that's where he ended up. And meth is a pretty horrible drug itself. So he was in the middle of the film relapsing on meth. His skin was a mess, and he was really very loath to come on camera because he didn't want to go on national television looking like he did.
So the heroin was a preferable drug in his case?
He preferred heroin.
Now, another approach that you also deal with is drug courts. They've been established as a way to keep heroin addicts out of prison. How do they work?
Well, that idea of drug courts came from the 1980s when prisons were just completely being clogged up with low-level drug offenders.
Aren't they still?
And they are, and that's what a lot of people will say, is there's not enough drug courts. But drug courts, literally, you come into this program and they give you a choice. You either go to jail or you have to sign up for mandatory treatment, intensive inpatient mandatory treatment over 12 to 18 months. And, it works really great for people that are in drug court. I think it's a very successful program while you're in it. But a lot of drug courts don't actually follow people once they've left drug courts. So it's hard to tell how well it works in the long term. It's also very intensive, it's babysitting people over the course of a year, and it's very clear, and a lot of people told us this in the making of the film, that drug courts works for some portion of the population, but it doesn't work for hardcore addicts.
And the addicts are often denied the right to due process, which is a concern of some people in the legal profession.
Well, that's basically the way the system was established. So in order to sort of speed up and unclog the courthouses, you have to plead guilty. and they'll forgive your crime if you've completed the program. But if you don't complete the program, you've automatically already accepted that you're guilty.
So then you go to jail
So you-
for robbing or
That's right.
stealing or whatever you were
That's-
accused of.
That's right. So, we have folks in our documentary that say that, it's a violation of our fundamental rights, but it's also a good idea.
Has this become an issue in the current presidential campaign?
It certainly has. You have a lot of candidates out there talking about the need for public health approaches to drug addiction, and I find it interesting, and I think we speak to that in the film, that because this is an epidemic that is affecting the larger white majority community, it seems that politicians are now talking about drug addiction in very progressive terms. And what's interesting is that it's not just liberals, but people from all walks, conservatives and Republicans and whatever you want, they're all speaking to the same tune.
Right now, is the favored approach talking about as a public health issue?
So let's look at this not as something that can be solved by throwing people away in jail. Let's figure out a different way. And, I think nobody quite knows what the solution is. There are so many towns that are embracing, this harm reduction model, but I think the film also drives a very important point, which is you can divert people out of jail, but if you divert them into an inadequate system, what are you doing? I mean, there are no services available. Treatment is terrible. So you're really leaving people that are very fragile to fend for themselves in a system that's just not working.
A listener points out that Svante Marek, the mayor of Ithaca, New York, just proposed opening the first supervised injection facilities where addicts can go and shoot up in a safe environment supervised by nurses. But the listener wonders, would that just encourage more addiction?
Well, it's a harm reduction model, which is basically the assumption is that people will do this whether you supervise or don't. So you might as well have a place where they can safely do this.
But then there's a whole clean needle exchange approach.
That's
Some
right.
people are horrified by it. Others are saying, well, it cuts down on illness. This is the sort of thing that has been tried in Europe, and it seems to have worked.
They're a lot more progressive in Europe and even Canada than we are. I mean, this idea that the listener's suggesting is happening right now in Vancouver.
Now, let's say somebody actually did kick the habit, but lost 5-10 years of a life. They also have to deal with the stigma that's attached, and it would be pretty hard to explain where all those lost years went.
That's right. I'm thinking of my college roommate who I said, where have you been for the last 15 years? And she said, I've been a heroin addict. There's nothing on her resume. There's no babies. There's no photos of weddings. Her whole life, it was gone.
So, did you see hear any hopeful approaches from the people you spoke to? Because it's my sense that right now we still don't know what to do.
I was very moved by seeing so many people, really caring about addiction in such a compassionate way and giving people dignity. And this is one of the most profound films I've ever been a part of. I've met such wonderful people. So that gives me hope. And it gives me hope that there are people out there that are realizing that we've got to come up with a better system because the system we have isn't good enough.
You have some very caring social workers in this film, and the addicts respond well to them.
Yes, it was very moving, and I think I tried my best to really humanize addiction, and I think people really struggle.
Marcella Gaviria, the film Chasing Heroin is part of the Frontline series, PBS stations tonight at 9 o'clock. Thank you so much for being on our show.
I really enjoyed it. I hope people tune in. Thank you. On tomorrow's show, Dave Stewart talks about forming the Eurythmics with Annie Lennox, and
his wide-ranging music career after that. And then Juan Thompson remembers what it was like growing up as the son of Hunter S. Thompson. Comedian Neil Brennan discusses his new Comedy Central show called Three Mics, and we'll learn about how engineers, designers, and inventors imagine their way into solving seemingly impossible problems. The Leonard Lopate Show is produced by Jessica Miller, producers are Harvey Pottnick and Catherine Millsop. Melissa Eakins, the executive producer. Dave Emmett was at the audio controls. We had help today from Chelsea Klopp, Nick Prada, Isabel Raban, and contributing producer Todd McGovern. I'm Leonard Lopate, your host. Thanks for listening. We'll see you tomorrow.
WNYC is supported by Penguin Random House, publisher of the Ordinary People Change the World series by Brad Meltzer, a picture book biography series celebrating American heroes like Martin Luther King, Amelia Earhart, and Jackie Robinson. Available now.
Okay, Ted, what are New York values?
I think most people know exactly what New York values are.
I'm from New York.
Well, you're from New York, so you might not. But I promise you, the state of South Carolina, they do.
Thanks, Ted. On the next Brian Lair Show, we begin a 7-part New York values series. Part 1, what are New York values to you and to your red state relatives? The Brian Lair Show, weekdays at 10 a.m. on WNYC.
Up next on Fresh Air, a conversation with Dame Maggie Smith, best known in the United States for playing the Dowager Countess on Downton Abbey and Professor McGonagall in the Harry Potter films. She's now in a film called Lady in the Van. 93.9 FM, AM 820 is here and now.
This is WNYC, FM, HD, and AM, New York.
From WHYY in Philadelphia, this is Fresh Air. I'm Dave Davies in for Terry Gross. Today, Maggie Smith.
I'm a woman, Mary. I can be as contrary as I choose.
Best known in the United States for playing the Dowager Countess of Grantham on Downton Abbey, she stars in the new film The Lady in the Van. It's based on a true story of an elderly woman who lived in a dilapidated van for 15 years.
Quite truthfully, I always felt like a barrack lady in various things, layers and different colours of things that I had on.
Smith won her first Oscar in 1970 for her role in The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. She'll talk about her early career, acting in the Harry Potter films, and how it's only recently she's had to deal with adoring fans.
It only happened to me since Downton Abbey, so I blame the whole thing on television.
Also, rock critic Ken Tucker reviews Bonnie Raitt's new album. That's all coming up on today's Fresh Air. First News.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The Obama administration is staging another controversial attempt at shutting down the detention center at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba.
15 years after 9/11, 15 years after the worst terrorist attack in American history, we're still having to defend the existence of a facility and a process where not a single verdict has been reached in those attacks. Not a single one.
The president has announced a plan for shuttering the U.S. military prison currently housing 91 inmates. He says keeping the facility open will only embolden ISIS and other terrorists, continue to be a stain on the record of a country that promotes human rights, and will be a heavy drain on this nation's financial resources. But Congress's Republican majority and some Democrats oppose closing Guantanamo and any attempt at transferring additional terror suspects to U.S. soil. Nevada is holding the latest contest in the Republican race for the party's presidential nomination. Candidates have fanned out across the state, urging people to take part in the caucuses. The frontrunner, Donald Trump, is seeking to build on his win last weekend in South Carolina's primary. Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio are battling for the support of core Republicans who don't want Trump to win the nomination. Comments from the oil ministers of Saudi Arabia and Iran are weighing down oil prices today. NPR's John Itzi reports the Saudi minister Ali Al-Naimi says his country is not planning any cut in oil production despite a global oil glut.
The Saudis, along with other OPEC members and Russia, have proposed a cap on oil production at current levels. They want other big producers like Iran to go along, but an Iranian news agency reports that Iran's oil minister is calling the proposed freeze a joke. That's because Iran is struggling to boost production after years of being restrained by sanctions, while its rivals, the Saudis and the Russians, are currently producing at near record levels. Meanwhile, Saudi Minister Al-Naimi told an oil industry audience in Houston that his country welcomes competition from U.S. shale oil producers. However, many see the Saudis